poor family receives a mysterious call in the dead of night. The news they hear changes everything and leaves them in tears. The Jones family huddled around their small kitchen table, the dim light of a single bulb casting long shadows across their weary faces. Sarah, the mother, stirred a pot of watery soup, stretching the meager ingredients as far as they could go. Her husband, Mike, sat with his head in his hands, bills scattered before him like a depressing jigsaw puzzle. "Mom, I'm still hungry," whispered Lily, their 10-year-old daughter, her big brown eyes peering up at Sarah. Sarah's heart clenched. "I know, sweetie. Here, you can have my portion." She ladled the last of the soup into Lily's bowl, ignoring the growl of her own empty stomach. Jake, their teenage son, pushed his chair back with a screech. "This sucks," he muttered, stomping off to the tiny bedroom he shared with Lily. Mike looked up, his face etched with worry lines. "Jake, come back here. We're having a family dinner." "What family dinner?" Jake's voice cracked with frustration. "There's barely enough food for Lily, let alone all of us." Sarah placed a gentle hand on Mike's shoulder. "Let him be. He's just frustrated." Mike nodded, his shoulders slumping. "I know. We all are." He picked up another bill, squinting at the red final notice stamp. "I don't know how we're going to make it through another month." The Jones family hadn't always struggled like this. Once upon a time, they'd been comfortably middle class. Mike had a steady job at the local factory, and Sarah worked part-time at the library. They'd even managed to save a little each month. But then the factory closed, and Mike's job disappeared overnight. Sarah's hours were cut, and suddenly, their carefully built life began to crumble. Now, they lived in a rundown apartment on the outskirts of town. The wallpaper peeled in corners, and the faucet in the bathroom never stopped dripping, no matter how many times Mike tried to fix it. But it was all they could afford. Sarah finished washing the dishes, her hands red and chapped from the cheap soap. She gazed out the small window above the sink, watching as the streetlights flickered on one by one. The sun had long since set, but the summer heat lingered, making the small apartment feel stuffy and claustrophobic. "I'm going to check on Jake," she said, drying her hands on a threadbare towel. She found him lying on his bed, headphones on, staring at the ceiling. Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, and Jake reluctantly removed one earbud. "I know this is hard," Sarah began, her voice soft. "But we're going to get through this. We always do." Jake sat up, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "How, Mom?" "Dad can't find a job, and we can barely afford food. I heard you talking about selling your wedding ring." Sarah's hand instinctively went to the simple gold band on her finger. It was true, she'd considered it, but it felt like giving up the last piece of their old life. "We'll figure something out," she said, trying to inject confidence into her voice. "Your dad has an interview next week, and I'm picking up extra shifts at the library." Jake nodded, but Sarah could see the doubt in his eyes. She pulled him into a hug, feeling his lanky teenage frame against her. "When did he get so tall?" "I love you, Jake. We all love you. That's something money can't buy." Jake hugged her back fiercely. "I love you too, Mom." As Sarah left the room, she saw Lily standing in the doorway, clutching her worn stuffed rabbit. "Is everything okay, Mommy?" Sarah scooped her up, marveling at how light she felt. "Everything's fine, sweetheart. Let's get you ready for bed." Later that night, after the kids were asleep, Sarah and Mike sat on their second-hand couch, the springs poking through in places. Mike had his arm around Sarah, and she leaned into him, drawing comfort from his familiar presence. "We'll get through this," Mike murmured, echoing Sarah's earlier words to Jake. "We have to." Sarah nodded, closing her eyes. She tried to imagine a future where they weren't constantly worried about money, where Lily could have new clothes and Jake could go to college. It seemed impossibly far away. As the clock ticked past midnight, the Jones family slept fitfully, unaware that their lives were about to change dramatically. In the quiet of the night, their old landline phone sat silent, waiting for a call that would turn their world upside down. The Jones family stood in awe at the entrance of Willow Creek Estate, their eyes wide as they took in the sprawling property before them. The mansion loomed in the distance, its weathered stone facade a testament to its age and neglect. Overgrown ivy clung to the walls, and the shutters hung askew from many windows. "This is ours?" Jake whispered, his voice a mix of disbelief and excitement. Mike nodded, still stunned. "For the next year, at least. If we can make it that long." Sarah squeezed his hand. "We will. We have to." Lily tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, it looks like a castle from my storybooks." Sarah smiled down at her daughter. "It does, doesn't it? Let's go explore our new castle." As they approached the front door, the gravel crunching beneath their feet, an elderly man emerged from around the side of the house. He wore overalls and a faded cap, his wrinkled face breaking into a warm smile as he saw them. "You must be the Joneses," he called out, waving a gnarled hand. "I'm George, the caretaker. Been looking after this place for nigh on 40 years now." Mike stepped forward, extending his hand. "Nice to meet you, George. I'm Mike, and this is my wife, Sarah, our son, Jake, and our daughter, Lily." George shook Mike's hand firmly. "Welcome to Willow Creek. It's been a long time since this old place had a family in it. Come on, I'll show you around." As they followed George into the house, the musty smell of disuse hit them. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight streaming through grimy windows. The grand foyer was filled with sheet-covered furniture, like ghosts of a more prosperous time. "It's big," Sarah said, trying to sound optimistic. She couldn't help but think of all the cleaning that lay ahead. George chuckled. "That it is, ma'am. But don't you worry, I'll help you get it shipshape in no time." He led them through room after room, each grander and more intimidating than the last. The kitchen was enormous, with an old-fashioned wood-burning stove and a pantry bigger than their entire old apartment. The library was filled floor to ceiling with books, their leather bindings cracked with age. As they climbed the creaking staircase to the second floor, Lily whispered, "Jake, do you think there are ghosts here?" Jake rolled his eyes. "Don't be silly, Lily. There's no such thing as ghosts." But even he couldn't suppress a shiver as they passed a particularly dark hallway. George showed them to their bedrooms, each spacious and filled with antique furniture. "These were all part of the estate," he explained. "Mr. Wilkinson, that's your relative who left you this place. He never did like modern stuff." As they finished the tour in Mr. Wilkinson's study, Mike turned to George. "It's incredible, but how are we supposed to maintain all this? We can barely afford groceries, let alone the upkeep on a place like this." George's eyes twinkled. "Ah, now that's the clever part. Mr. Wilkinson left a fund for the estate's maintenance. You won't have to worry about that. Your job is just to live here, breathe life back into these old walls." Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders. That's amazing. But why? Why us? We never even knew Mr. Wilkinson." George shrugged. "That's not for me to say. Mr. Wilkinson had his reasons, I'm sure. Now, why don't you folks get settled in? I've stocked the kitchen with some basics. I live in the cottage just down the lane if you need anything." As George left, the family stood in silence, the reality of their situation sinking in. Jake was the first to speak. "This is insane. Yesterday we were eating watered-down soup, and now we're living in a mansion." Mike ran a hand through his hair. "I know, son. It's a lot to take in." Lily tugged at Sarah's hand. "Can I pick my room now, Mommy?" Sarah laughed, the sound echoing in the large room. "Of course, sweetie. Let's all pick our rooms." As they dispersed to explore their new home, Sarah caught Mike's eye. She saw her own mix of excitement and apprehension reflected there. This was their chance, their miracle. But as she looked around at the dusty grandeur, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this inheritance than met the eye. Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the overgrown gardens. A cool breeze rustled through the willow trees that gave the estate its name, carrying with it the promise of new beginnings, and perhaps a few secrets waiting to be uncovered. As the Jones family settled into their new life at Willow Creek Estate, the days began to take on a rhythm of their own. The initial excitement of their sudden change in fortune gave way to the realities of living in such a grand yet isolated place. Sarah found herself waking early each morning, drawn to the kitchen where she'd brew a pot of coffee and watch the mist rise off the sprawling grounds. On this particular morning, she cradled her mug, lost in thought, when Mike's arms encircled her from behind. "Penny for your thoughts," he murmured, his voice still rough with sleep. Sarah leaned into him, sighing. "Just thinking about how different everything is now. It's like we're living in a dream." Mike nodded, reaching for his own coffee. "I know what you mean. I keep waiting for someone to pinch me and wake me up back in that cramped apartment." Their quiet moment was interrupted by the thundering of footsteps down the grand staircase. Lily burst into the kitchen, her eyes wide with excitement. "Mom! Dad! I found a secret door in my closet!" she exclaimed, bouncing on her toes. Sarah and Mike exchanged glances. "A secret door?" Sarah asked, raising an eyebrow. "Uh-huh. It's hidden behind some old coats. Can we go explore it, please?" Mike chuckled, ruffling Lily's hair. "After breakfast, kiddo. Let's see what this secret door of yours is all about." As they prepared breakfast, Jake shuffled into the kitchen, yawning. "What's all the commotion about?" Lily launched into an animated retelling of her discovery, while Jake listened with growing interest. Despite his attempts to appear cool and unaffected by their new surroundings, Sarah could see the spark of curiosity in his eyes. After breakfast, the family trooped up to Lily's room. Sure enough, hidden behind a rack of musty old coats, there was a small, ornate door. "Well, I'll be," Mike muttered, running his hand over the intricate carvings. "This house is full of surprises." With a bit of effort, they managed to pry the door open. Behind it lay a narrow, winding staircase disappearing into darkness. "Cool," Jake breathed, all pretense of disinterest gone. Mike pulled out his phone, using it as a flashlight. "All right, family adventure time. Stay close." They ascended the stairs, the wood creaking beneath their feet. The air grew cooler and mustier as they climbed. Finally, they emerged into a large circular room at the top of one of the mansion's towers. Dust-covered sheets draped over various shapes, and cobwebs festooned the corners. But what caught their attention was the wall of windows offering a breathtaking view of the entire estate. "Wow," Sarah gasped, moving to the windows. "You can see for miles up here." As they explored the room, pulling sheets off old furniture and examining curios, Jake called out, "Hey, look at this." He held up an old leather-bound book. "It looks like a journal or something." Mike took the book, carefully opening it. "It's a diary," he said, squinting at the faded handwriting. "Dated 1923. It belonged to Elizabeth Wilkinson." "That must be Mr. Wilkinson's grandmother," Sarah mused. "What does it say?" Mike read aloud, "Today I overheard Father speaking of the family secret. He doesn't know I know, but there's more to Willow Creek than meets the eye. The true treasure lies hidden, waiting for the right person to uncover it." A hush fell over the family as Mike's words hung in the air. "A secret treasure?" Lily whispered, her eyes shining. "Like in pirate stories?" Jake scoffed, but there was a note of uncertainty in his voice. "Come on, that's just some old lady's imagination running wild." Sarah and Mike shared a look. "Maybe," Sarah said slowly. "But remember what the lawyer said about Mr. Wilkinson having his reasons for choosing us?" Mike nodded, his brow furrowed in thought. "It does make you wonder." As they continued to explore the tower room, each lost in their own thoughts about the diary's mysterious words, a new energy seemed to fill the air. The grand old house, which had at first felt like an intimidating stranger, now held the promise of adventure and discovery. Later that evening, as Sarah tucked Lily into bed, the little girl asked, "Mom, do you think we'll find the secret treasure?" Sarah smiled, smoothing Lily's hair. "I don't know, sweetheart. but I do know that we've already found something precious. A new beginning for our family. As she closed Lily's door and walked down the hallway, Sarah paused to look out a window at the moonlit grounds of Willow Creek. The estate's shadows seemed to hold countless secrets, waiting to be uncovered. For the first time since they had arrived, Sarah felt a thrill of excitement about the year ahead. Whatever mysteries Willow Creek held, whatever challenges they might face, they would face them together. And perhaps, in solving the riddles of the past, they would find the key to their future. The discovery of Elizabeth Wilkinson's diary sparked a renewed interest in exploring Willow Creek Estate. Over the next few weeks, the Jones family found themselves caught up in the excitement of uncovering the mansion's secrets. One sunny afternoon, Mike and Jake decided to tackle the overgrown gardens. Armed with rusty tools they'd found in an old shed, they set to work clearing away years of neglect. "You know, Dad," Jake grunted as he wrestled with a particularly stubborn weed, "this place isn't so bad after all." Mike paused, wiping sweat from his brow. "Oh? What happened to 'this sucks' and 'I miss our old place'?" Jake shrugged, a hint of a smile on his face. "I don't know. It's kind of growing on me, I guess. Plus, my room here is way bigger." Mike chuckled, clapping his son on the shoulder. "I'm glad to hear it, son. It's growing on me, too." As they worked, they uncovered an old stone path leading away from the main garden. Curiosity piqued, they followed it, pushing through overgrown bushes until they came upon a small, hidden courtyard. "Whoa!" Jake breathed, taking in the sight. In the center of the courtyard stood a weathered stone fountain, dry and cracked with age. Around it, barely visible beneath the overgrowth, were stone benches and what looked like the remains of a chess table. "This must have been beautiful once," Mike mused, running his hand along the fountain's edge. Jake nodded, then froze. "Dad, look at this," he said, pointing to an inscription on the fountain's base. Mike crouched down, brushing away dirt and moss, to reveal the words, "The key to the heart lies beneath the waters of truth." "Another clue?" Jake asked, excitement creeping into his voice. Mike stood, his mind racing. "Could be. Let's get this place cleaned up and see what else we can find." Meanwhile, inside the mansion, Sarah and Lily were engaged in their own exploration. They'd taken to examining each room methodically, cleaning as they went and cataloging interesting finds. "Mommy, look what I found!" Lily called from beneath a large desk in the study. Sarah knelt down beside her daughter. "What is it, sweetie?" Lily held up a small, ornate key. It was taped under the drawer. Sarah took the key, turning it over in her hands. It was old, its brass tarnished with age, but the intricate design on its handle was still visible. A willow tree. "Good eye, Lily," Sarah praised. "I wonder what this opens." Just then, they heard Mike and Jake's excited voices as they burst into the house. "Sarah! Lily! You've got to see what we found," Mike called. The family gathered in the kitchen as Mike and Jake recounted their discovery of the hidden courtyard and the mysterious inscription. "A hidden fountain and a secret key on the same day?" Sarah mused, showing them the key Lily had found. "This can't be a coincidence." Jake's eyes lit up. "What if the key opens something in the fountain? Like, maybe there's a hidden compartment or something." "It's worth a shot," Mike agreed. "But we'll need to clear out that courtyard first and see if we can get the fountain working again." Over the next few days, the family worked together to restore the hidden courtyard. George, the caretaker, was delighted by their discovery and helped them repair the old pump system for the fountain. Finally, the day came to test their theory. As water began to flow from the fountain for the first time in decades, the family gathered around, holding their breath in anticipation. "Okay, Lily," Sarah said, handing her the key. "You found it, so you should do the honors." Lily stepped forward, her small face scrunched in concentration as she examined the fountain. Suddenly, she pointed to a small, almost invisible keyhole at the base. With trembling hands, she inserted the key and turned it. There was a soft click, and a panel at the fountain's base swung open. Inside was a small, waterproof box. Mike carefully pulled it out and opened it. revealing a stack of old letters in a small, leather-bound book. "They're love letters," Sarah gasped, gently unfolding one. "From Elizabeth Wilkinson to someone named Thomas." "Who's Thomas?" Jake asked, peering over her shoulder. Mike opened the small book. "It looks like a journal. Listen to this. My dearest Thomas, if you're reading this, then you've solved the first of our riddles. Our love may be forbidden by society, but I refuse to let it die. Follow the clues, my love, and find the truth of our hearts." A hush fell over the family as they absorbed the words. The mystery of Willow Creek was deepening, revealing a tale of secret love and hidden truths. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across their newfound secret courtyard, the Jones family shared a look of determination. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever secrets Willow Creek still held, they would face them together, as a family. The discovery of Elizabeth's love letters to Thomas ignited a spark of curiosity that spread through the Jones family like wildfire. Each day brought new excitement as they delved deeper into the mystery of Willow Creek Estate. One evening, as the family gathered in the newly cleaned library, Sarah spread the letters on the large oak table. "I've been reading these," she said, her eyes bright with excitement. "It seems Elizabeth and Thomas were in love, but something was keeping them apart." Mike nodded, flipping through the small journal they'd found. According to this, Thomas was the son of the groundskeeper. Their relationship would have been scandalous in the 1920s. Jake, who had been uncharacteristically engrossed in one of the old books from the library shelves, looked up. "So what happened to them? Did they ever end up together?" Sarah shook her head, a touch of sadness in her voice. The letters stop abruptly in 1925. The last one mentions a final test that Thomas had to complete to prove his worth to Elizabeth's family. Lily, who had been quietly coloring nearby, piped up. "Maybe that's the treasure we're supposed to find." The family exchanged glances, considering the possibility. It was then that Jake slammed his book shut with a triumphant, "Aha! Look at this," he said, opening the book again and pointing to a faded photograph tucked between its pages. It showed a young couple standing in front of Willow Creek Estate. The woman wore a flapper-style dress, while the man was dressed in simpler, working-class clothes. "Is that them?" Mike asked, leaning in for a closer look. Jake nodded excitedly. "I think so. And look at the inscription on the back." Sarah carefully turned the photo over. Written in faded ink were the words, "Elizabeth and Thomas, May 1924, where it all began." "Where what began?" Lily asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. Mike scratched his chin thoughtfully. "Their relationship, maybe? Or perhaps their treasure hunt?" The idea hung in the air, filling the room with a sense of possibility. Sarah was the first to break the silence. "You know, we've been so caught up in this mystery, we haven't really thought about why Mr. Wilkinson left us this place. What if solving this riddle is part of our test?" The family pondered this new perspective. It was true that they had been so swept up in the excitement of their new home and the unfolding mystery that they had almost forgotten the strange circumstances that brought them there. "Well," Mike said, standing up with determination, "there's only one way to find out. Let's solve this thing." Over the next few days, the Jones family threw themselves into their investigation with renewed vigor. They combed through every inch of the estate, looking for clues that Elizabeth and Thomas might have left behind. Jake and Lily took charge of exploring the grounds, retracing the steps that Thomas, as the groundskeeper's son, might have taken. Sarah delved deeper into the letters, trying to decipher any hidden meanings in Elizabeth's words. Mike, with his practical mindset, focused on the structure of the house itself, looking for any hidden compartments or secret passages. Their efforts paid off when Lily made a discovery in the old greenhouse. "Look," she called out one afternoon, pointing to a series of scratches on one of the glass panes. Upon closer inspection, they realized it was a message etched into the glass. "In the heart of the willow, where branches entwine, lies the key to our love, hidden by design." The family rushed to the ancient willow tree that stood at the center of the estate. Its massive, drooping branches created a curtain of leaves that touched the ground, forming a natural hideaway. "It's like a secret room," Lily whispered in awe as they pushed through the branches. Inside the willow's embrace, they found a small metal plaque affixed to the trunk. It bore another riddle. Beneath the roots of this ancient tree, a love story waits for eyes to see. But heed this warning, clear and true. The path of love is meant for two. As they pondered the meaning of these words, a gust of wind rustled through the willow's leaves, creating a whisper-like sound that seemed to echo the long-lost voices of Elizabeth and Thomas. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow through the willow's branches. The Jones family stood together, united in their quest, feeling the weight of history and the promise of discovery around them. "What do you think it means?" Jake asked, breaking the reverent silence. Mike squeezed Sarah's hand, a smile playing on his lips. "I'm not sure, son, but I think we're about to find out. Tomorrow we start digging, both literally and figuratively." As they made their way back to the house, each lost in thought about the clues they'd uncovered, they felt a growing sense that they were not just uncovering a hidden treasure, but also piecing together a story of love that had waited nearly a century to be told. The mystery of Willow Creek was far from solved, but the Jones family was more determined than ever to see it through. Together. The next morning dawned bright and clear, filled with promise and anticipation. The Jones family gathered around the kitchen table, eager to begin their day of exploration. "All right, team," Mike said, spreading out a rough map of the estate they'd drawn. "We need to approach this systematically. The riddle mentioned beneath the roots, so we'll start there." Sarah nodded, sipping her coffee. "But remember what it said about the path being a meant for two. I think we need to be careful about how we proceed." Jake, who had been unusually quiet, spoke up. What if we're not supposed to dig? Maybe it's more metaphorical." The family paused, considering Jake's words. It was Lily who broke the silence. "Like in my storybooks, sometimes the treasure isn't real gold, it's something else special." Mike ruffled Lily's hair affectionately. "You might be onto something there, kiddo. Let's keep that in mind as we explore." With a plan in place, they headed out to the willow tree. The morning dew still clung to the grass and birds chirped merrily in the surrounding trees. As they approached the willow, its long, graceful branches swaying gently in the breeze, they felt a sense of reverence. "It really is beautiful," Sarah murmured, reaching out to touch the rough bark of the trunk. As they examined the area around the tree, Jake noticed something odd about the ground near its base. "Hey, look at this," he called, pointing to a slight depression in the earth. Mike knelt down, running his hand over the spot. "Good eye, son. This doesn't look natural." Carefully, they began to clear away the grass and topsoil. Beneath, they found a large flat stone. It took all four of them to lift it, revealing a small, hollow space underneath. "A time capsule!" Lily exclaimed excitedly. Inside the hollow was an old metal box. Mike carefully lifted it out, and they gathered around as he opened it. Inside, they found a collection of items: a faded photograph, a small journal, and two simple gold rings tied together with a ribbon. Sarah gently untied the ribbon, examining the rings. "These must be wedding bands," she said softly. "Look, there's an inscription inside each one." Squinting in the dappled sunlight filtering through the willow's leaves, they read the inscriptions: "Thomas and Elizabeth, forever entwined in one, and our love grows stronger with time," in the other. Mike opened the journal, his eyes widening as he read. "Listen to this," he said, his voice filled with awe. "My dearest Elizabeth, if you're reading this, then you've solved our final riddle. Our love, like this willow tree, has roots that run deep and branches that reach for the sky. Though society may not understand, we have found a way to be together. Always." Sarah wiped a tear from her eye. "They did end up together," she whispered. As they continued to read through the journal, a story unfolded before them. Thomas and Elizabeth had indeed faced opposition from her family, but they had persevered. They married in secret and left clues throughout the estate, creating a treasure hunt for future generations to discover their love story. The final entry in the journal read, "To those who find this, know that true love can overcome any obstacle. We have lived a life filled with joy, and it is our hope that Willow Creek will always be a place where love can flourish. May you find your own treasure here as we have." As the family sat beneath the willow tree, absorbing the beautiful story they had uncovered, they felt a shift in their perspective. The treasure they had been seeking wasn't gold or jewels, but something far more valuable, a testament to enduring love and the power of perseverance. "You know," Mike said, looking around at his family, "I think I understand now why Mr. Wilkinson left us this place. It's not about the money or the estate itself. It's about family, about sticking together through tough times." Sarah nodded, squeezing his hand. "And about giving love a chance to grow, even when things seem impossible." Jake, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, spoke up. "So does this mean our treasure hunt is over?" Lily shook her head vigorously. "No way! We still have to figure out why Mr. Wilkinson chose us. There's got to be more to find." The family laughed, their spirits lifted by Lily's enthusiasm and the beautiful story they had uncovered. As they carefully repacked the time capsule and returned it to its resting place, they felt a renewed sense of purpose. Willow Creek Estate was more than just a grand old house. It was a place of secrets, of love, and of second chances. And for the Jones family, it was becoming something even more important. It was becoming home. As they walked back to the house, plans for further exploration already forming, they knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, just as Thomas and Elizabeth had done all those years ago. The discovery of Thomas and Elizabeth's love story breathed new life into the Jones family's adventure at Willow Creek Estate. As summer faded into autumn, they settled into a comfortable routine, balancing their daily responsibilities with continued exploration of the property. One crisp October morning, Sarah stood at the kitchen window, sipping her coffee and watching the leaves fall in a kaleidoscope of reds and golds. Mike came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Penny for your thoughts," he murmured. Sarah leaned back into him, sighing contentedly. "Just thinking about how much has changed. Remember how worried we were when we first got here?" Mike chuckled. "How could I forget? But look at us now. Jake's grades are improving, Lily's thriving, and we're doing better than we have in years." Their moment was interrupted by Jake bounding into the kitchen, an old leather-bound book in his hands. "Mom, Dad, check this out. I found it hidden behind some books in the library." Sarah took the book, carefully opening its fragile pages. "It looks like a ledger," she said, scanning the neat columns of numbers and names. Mike peered over her shoulder. "These must be records from when the estate was a working farm. Look at the date, 1902. As they flipped through the pages, a yellowed envelope slipped out and fluttered to the floor. Lily, who had just entered the kitchen, scooped it up. "It's addressed to us!" she exclaimed, her eyes wide with excitement. The family gathered around as Sarah carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, the paper brittle with age but the handwriting still clear. "To the family of Willow Creek, if you're reading this, then you've begun to uncover the secrets of this estate. I am Richard Wilkinson, and I write this in the year 1985. By now, you've likely discovered the story of my grandparents, Thomas and Elizabeth. Their love and perseverance in the face of adversity have been an inspiration to our family for generations. But there is more to Willow Creek than just their story. This estate has been a sanctuary for those in need, a place of new beginnings and second chances. It is my hope that it has become that for you as well. Your presence here is no accident. I have watched and waited, seeking a family who embodies the spirit of Willow Creek, resilience, love, and the courage to face life's challenges together. There is one final task ahead of you. One last secret to uncover. In the heart of the estate lies a hidden chamber, accessible only to those who truly understand the meaning of family and perseverance. The clue to its location lies in the very foundations of Willow Creek. Look to where the past and present intertwine, where the roots of our family tree run deepest. May your journey bring you as much joy and fulfillment as it has brought to generations of Wilkinsons. Yours sincerely, Richard Wilkinson. A hushed silence fell over the kitchen as the family absorbed the contents of the letter. It was Jake who finally broke the silence. So, Mr. Wilkinson chose us specifically? But how? Why? Mike ran a hand through his hair, his brow furrowed in thought. I don't know, son, but it seems we've only scratched the surface of what's really going on here. Sarah reread the letter, her mind racing. A hidden chamber in the heart of the estate, and something about the foundations in a family tree. Lily's eyes lit up. Oh, maybe it's talking about the big family tree painting in the main hall. The family rushed to the grand entrance hall, where an enormous oil painting dominated one wall. It depicted a sprawling willow tree, its branches laden with names and dates. The Wilkinson family tree. As they examined the painting closely, Jake noticed something odd. Look here, he said, pointing to a small imperfection near the base of the painted tree. It looks like there's something behind the canvas. Carefully, they removed the painting from the wall, revealing a small safe built into the wall behind it. On the safe's door was an intricate lock mechanism with various symbols instead of numbers. It's some kind of puzzle lock, Mike mused, running his fingers over the symbols. But how do we solve it? Sarah studied the lock, then looked back at the painting. The letter mentioned the foundations of Willow Creek. What if the combination is hidden in the roots of the tree in the painting? As they scrutinized the painted roots, they noticed tiny symbols hidden among the twists and turns. Working together, they deciphered the sequence and input it into the lock. With a satisfying click, the safe swung open. Inside was a small, ornate key and another note. You've come this far together. The final secret awaits in the place where it all began. Use this key wisely, and remember, the greatest treasure is the one you already possess. The Jones family stood together, the key a promise of further adventure in their hands. They had come so far from their struggling days in the city, and yet they knew their journey at Willow Creek was far from over. As the autumn wind whistled through the grand old house, they shared a look of determination. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever secrets still remained, they would face them as they had faced everything else since arriving at Willow Creek, together, as a family. The discovery of the key and the cryptic note set the Jones family abuzz with excitement. They spent the next few days poring over every inch of the estate, searching for the place where it all began. Maybe it's the willow tree again? Lily suggested one evening as they sat around the dinner table, brainstorming ideas. Jake shook his head. We've already checked there twice. It's got to be somewhere else. Sarah, who had been quietly listening, suddenly sat up straight. What if we're thinking too literally? Remember how the last clue was hidden in plain sight, in that painting we've walked past 100 times? Mike nodded slowly, a glimmer of understanding in his eyes. You're onto something, honey. We need to look at this from a different angle. As if on cue, a gust of wind rattled the windows, drawing their attention to the darkening sky outside. Rain had started to fall, pattering against the glass in a soothing rhythm. You know, Mike mused, we've been so focused on the inside of the house and the grounds, we haven't really thought about the exterior much. Sarah's eyes widened. The cornerstone. Every old building has one. It's literally the foundation, where it all began. Excitement rippled through the family. Despite the rain, they grabbed flashlights and umbrellas, rushing out to examine the exterior of the mansion. They circled the house, scrutinizing every brick near the ground level. It was Jake who finally spotted it, a large, weathered stone near the back of the house, bearing the inscription, Willow Creek Estate, founded 1823. "This has to be it," he said, running his hand over the engraved letters. Mike knelt down, examining the stone closely. "Look here," he said, pointing to a small, almost invisible keyhole at the base of the stone. "I think we've found our lock." With trembling hands, Sarah inserted the ornate key they had found. It fit perfectly. As she turned it, they heard a faint click, followed by a low rumbling sound. To their amazement, a section of the wall beside the cornerstone began to slide away, revealing a hidden passage. "Whoa!" Jake breathed, his earlier skepticism forgotten in the face of this discovery. Mike shone his flashlight into the passage. A narrow staircase led down into darkness. "Well, family," he said, a mix of excitement and apprehension in his voice. "Shall we see where this leads?" They descended the stairs carefully, the beam of their flashlights illuminating rough stone walls. The air grew cooler and damper as they went deeper underground. Finally, they emerged into a large circular chamber. As they swept their lights around, they gasped in collective awe. The walls were lined with shelves, filled with books, documents, and artifacts. In the center of the room stood a large, ornate desk, upon which sat an old typewriter and stacks of yellowed paper. "It's like a secret study," Sarah whispered, running her fingers along the spines of the books. Mike approached the desk, picking up a framed photograph. It showed a man in his 60s, standing in front of Willow Creek Estate. "I think this must be Richard Wilkinson," he said, showing the others. As they explored the chamber, they found journals detailing generations of Wilkinson family history, legal documents, and even old maps of the estate. Lily, who had been examining a shelf near the floor, suddenly called out, "Look! There's another letter." The envelope, addressed simply to "The Chosen Family," contained a single sheet of paper. Mike read it aloud. "Congratulations on finding your way to the heart of Willow Creek. This chamber holds the accumulated knowledge and history of our family and this estate, but more importantly, it represents the true purpose of Willow Creek. For generations, this estate has served as a sanctuary for those in need of a fresh start. My ancestors, including Thomas and Elizabeth, believed in the power of second chances. They used their resources to help families rebuild their lives, always in secret, always with compassion. I have chosen you to continue this legacy. The struggles you faced, the love that binds you, and the resilience you've shown make you the perfect guardians for Willow Creek's true purpose. In this room, you'll find everything you need to understand the estate's history and its mission. The choice of what to do with this knowledge is yours. Will you continue the tradition of helping others or forge your own path? Whatever you decide, know that Willow Creek is now truly yours. The inheritance is not just the estate itself, but the opportunity to make a difference in the world, one family at a time. May you find as much joy in this purpose as I have. With hope for the future, Richard Wilkinson. As Mike's voice faded, a profound silence fell over the chamber. The Jones family looked at each other, a mix of emotions playing across their faces: awe, excitement, and a deep sense of responsibility. They had come to Willow Creek seeking a chance to rebuild their own lives. Now they found themselves entrusted with the power to help others do the same. As they stood in that secret chamber, surrounded by the weight of history and the promise of the future, the Jones family knew that their greatest adventure was just beginning. In the weeks following their discovery of the secret chamber, the Jones family found themselves at a crossroads. The responsibility bestowed upon them by Richard Wilkinson weighed heavily on their minds as they grappled with the decision of how to move forward. One crisp autumn evening, they gathered in the library, surrounded by the books and documents they had brought up from the hidden room. The warm glow of the fireplace cast dancing shadows on the walls as they sat in contemplative silence. Mike was the first to speak. "I've been thinking a lot about what Mr. Wilkinson wrote," he said, his voice soft but determined. "About continuing the legacy of helping others." Sarah nodded, reaching out to squeeze his hand. "Me too," It's a big responsibility, but I can't help feeling like this is why we were brought here." Jake, who had been uncharacteristically quiet lately, looked up from the old journal he'd been reading. "You know, I used to think all this was just some crazy coincidence, but after reading about all the families Willow Creek has helped over the years, it's pretty amazing." Lily, curled up in an oversized armchair, hugged her stuffed rabbit close. "Does this mean we get to help other families like us?" she asked, her eyes wide with excitement. Mike smiled at his daughter's enthusiasm. "That's what we need to decide, sweetie. It's a big commitment." As they discussed the possibilities, a knock at the door interrupted their conversation. George, the caretaker, poked his head in. "Sorry to disturb you folks," he said, "but there's someone here to see you. Says it's important." Curious, the family followed George to the foyer. There they found a young woman standing nervously, clutching a worn backpack. "Hi," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "My name's Emily. I heard this place might be able to help me." Sarah stepped forward, her heart going out to the clearly distressed young woman. "Why don't you come in and tell us about it?" Over cups of hot cocoa in the kitchen, Emily shared her story. She had lost her job and her apartment, and with no family to turn to, she was on the verge of homelessness. "I don't know how I knew to come here," she admitted. "It was like something was guiding me." The Jones family exchanged glances, a silent understanding passing between them. This was it, their first opportunity to continue the legacy of Willow Creek. "Emily," Mike said gently, "we might be able to help you, but first, we need to have a family discussion. Would you mind waiting here with George for a few minutes?" Back in the library, the decision was unanimous. "We have to help her," Jake insisted, surprising his parents with his passion. "It's what Mr. Wilkinson would have wanted," Lily added solemnly. Sarah and Mike nodded, feeling a mixture of nervousness and excitement. "All right then," Sarah said. "Let's do this." They invited Emily to stay in one of the estate's many guest rooms, explaining that Willow Creek had a history of helping people get back on their feet. Over the next few weeks, they helped her search for job opportunities, allowed her to use the estate's address for applications, and provided the support she needed to regain her footing. As they worked to help Emily, the Jones family found themselves growing closer than ever. They discovered strengths they didn't know they had: Jake's knack for research, Lily's boundless empathy, Sarah's organizational skills, and Mike's ability to connect with people from all walks of life. 1 month after Emily's arrival, she bounded into the kitchen with exciting news. "I got the job," she exclaimed, her eyes shining with happy tears. "I can't believe it. I don't know how to thank you all." Sarah hugged her, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "You don't need to thank us, Emily. This is what Willow Creek is all about." That evening, as Emily prepared to move into her new apartment, the Jones family stood on the front porch, watching the sunset over the estate. "You know," Mike said, his arm around Sarah, "I think we've found our calling." Sarah nodded, leaning into him. "It feels right, doesn't it? Like this is what we were meant to do, all along." Jake, who had grown noticeably more mature over the past weeks, spoke up. "So does this mean we're officially accepting Mr. Wilkinson's mission?" Lily bounced on her toes. "Can we help more people like Emily?" Mike and Sarah exchanged a look, then turned to their children with smiles. "Yes," they said in unison. "This is our new beginning, not just for us, but for everyone who needs it." As they watched Emily drive away, waving goodbye with promises to stay in touch, the Jones family felt a sense of purpose settle over them. They had come to Willow Creek seeking a chance to rebuild their own lives, and in the process they had found a way to help others do the same. The mystery of their inheritance had been solved, but their journey was far from over. In fact, it felt like it was just beginning. As the seasons changed and Willow Creek Estate blossomed with new life, so too did the Jones family's mission. Over the course of a year, they had transformed not only their own lives, but the lives of several families who had found their way to the estate's welcoming doors. On a warm spring morning, exactly 1 year after their arrival, the Jones family gathered in the secret chamber beneath the house. The room, once musty and forgotten, now hummed with purpose. New journals lined the shelves, documenting their efforts and the stories of those they'd helped. Mike stood at the old typewriter, carefully inserting a fresh sheet of paper. "I think it's time," he said, looking at his family with pride. Sarah nodded, her eyes misty with emotion. "We've come so far. It feels right to add our chapter to Willow Creek's history." As Mike began to type, the family reflected on their journey. They thought of Emily, now thriving in her new job and volunteering at a local shelter. They remembered the Johnson family, who had stayed with them for 3 months while rebuilding their lives after a natural disaster. And there was old Mr. Peterson, a widower who had found a new lease on life helping tend the estate's gardens. Jake, who had once been so reluctant about their move, now spoke with passion about the families they'd assisted. "You know, I used to think we were the ones who needed saving. But helping others, it's like we saved ourselves in the process." Lily, her face beaming with pride, added, "And we solved the mystery of Mr. Wilkinson's inheritance." As Mike finished typing, he read aloud the words that would become part of Willow Creek's legacy. "1 year ago, we arrived at Willow Creek Estate as a struggling family in search of a new beginning. Today, we write these words as the proud caretakers of a legacy of hope and second chances. Through the generosity and vision of the Wilkinson family, we have found our true calling, to open our hearts and this estate to those in need of a fresh start. In continuing this mission, we have discovered that the true treasure of Willow Creek lies not in its grand halls or hidden chambers, but in the power of compassion and the strength found in helping others. We pledge to carry on this tradition, honoring the past while looking toward a future filled with possibility for all who find their way to Willow Creek." As Mike's voice faded, Sarah produced an envelope from her pocket. "I think it's time we open this," she said softly. It was the final letter from Richard Wilkinson, meant to be read after a year had passed. With trembling hands, Mike opened the letter and read, "Dear Jones family, if you're reading this, a year has passed since you first arrived at Willow Creek. I have no doubt that you have risen to the challenge and embraced the true purpose of this estate. Your presence here was no accident. I chose you because I saw in your struggles and your love for each other the same spirit that has guided Willow Creek for generations. The estate and all its resources are now legally and rightfully yours. Use them wisely and continue to be a beacon of hope for those in need. Remember, the greatest legacy we can leave is not in buildings or fortunes, but in the lives we touch and the hope we inspire. With gratitude and faith in the future, Richard Wilkinson." As Mike folded the letter, a profound silence fell over the chamber. The Jones family looked at each other, their eyes shining with tears of joy and determination. They had arrived at Willow Creek Estate seeking a miracle, and in finding one, they had become miracle workers themselves. Their journey had come full circle, and as they embraced, they knew that their greatest adventures still lay ahead. For the Jones family, and for all those who would find their way to Willow Creek in the years to come, this was more than just a happy ending. It was a new beginning, full of promise and possibility. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. Now, how about another one? To watch another nice story, just click on the video appearing on your screen.